that potential breakthrough on Brexit, it's at risk. The issue? The Irish border. Still a major sticking point. The UK has been given until Monday to present a solution which avoids a hard border. The European Union wants an agreement before talks move on to trade. Kit Jukes is with us. He's from Société Générale, where he is an FX strategist. Up she goes, the pound. And then the Irish, my home country, sticking their heels in, the DUP and the Taoiseach on the other side of the border. I mean, just when we thought we were about to make a breakthrough, there seems a very intractable issue, which is the Irish border. How much do you think they'll get a deal done by next week? Is this the horse trading of politics? I
would be surprised if you got, a kind of all-encompassing solution to such an intractable problem by this time next week. If ever a can needed kicking down the road with an agreement that, look, we will sort out an agreement that works for everybody. We can't reach a final agreement because we don't know what the customs arrangements, trade arrangements are between the UK and the EU after Brexit, but we will agree to find a solution, and now can we move on to something else, would be a much better way of moving forwards than saying we need something solid now, because we won't get it.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? It's the wordsmiths who are busy behind the scenes, we understand, trying to craft some wording that is acceptable to both sides, and that's what it comes down to. Some wording that makes enough progress for the Irish but doesn't upset the DUP and therefore destabilise the UK government. It's all about the words that are found and that are chosen. But where is crunch time for UK assets then on this particular story, Kit? Because I see conflicting reports as to how much the deadline on Monday matters, for example. So if we come in on Monday and there's no quote-unquote solution for the Irish border, do we see a lot of pound selling?
A lot. We see some. I mean, again, come back. Our starting position is to be very gloomy about the economic impact of Brexit and pretty pessimistic about what happens. So just the thought that we might get a deal and move on to trade talks was very positive. Go back to where we were before, which is despondent, for want of a better expression, and we'll see sterling fall back, but might not even fall back all the way it rose. So this is we will go on reacting more to good than bad news, just because the pound's very low, it's very cheap, and the consensus is very pessimistic.
Well, if we take the risks, and Anna and I chatted through this, there's a lovely story that the team flagged it up this morning about Morgan Stanley. They put out a note about fear ye all, fear a potential Labour administration if the DUP withdrew their confidence and supply system to the UK government. The risks of an election rise, the risks of a Labour government rises. Jeremy Corbyn has responded. Morgan Stanley was saying, look, the skew that you've had over the past 20 years, which favours capital, not Labour, and Jeremy Corbyn comes out and says, well, you know what? He's put out his opposition to that. You need to think about tax rates going up, nationalisation, about the economic system, which has favoured capital over Labour in the past 20 years. So that's the fund manager side talking about the flip. And Jeremy Corbyn says, yes, you should be worried. You should be worried if we are potentially coming to power. How much discussion is there in the trading rooms of Société Générale in regards to that risk for market?
There's discussion about the election risk all of the time. I'd have to say, we go round in circles a little bit for a number of reasons. The first is, were we to have another election, that's almost the only way that the big tail risk of we don't actually do this, leaving the EU thing, could ever possibly happen. So it throws all the balls in the air and you're uncertain. So at the moment, markets are priced on the basis that the UK is going to leave the EU and it's going to do it possibly in quite a messy fashion without a good plan for the future. A lot of pessimism around. So an election can change that, and that would be good for sterling, even if it wasn't good for all sorts of other assets. So, so people ask that question. And then the bit that comes behind it is the DUP could throw the government into turmoil.
Yes.
But would the DUP do something that might bring Jeremy Corbyn into power deliberately? I mean, that's a pretty sort of stamp on your own big toe kind of a step for the DUP. So the politics is quite tricky to see it, and I think most people end up thinking this is going to be messy, it's going to be difficult, and that as soon as we start talking about the Irish border, we realise that trying to please the DUP, the Irish, and the British government is hard enough. It's hard enough to get in the way of what really needs to be done, which is not to go back and open the can of worms that was closed with the Good Friday Accord, frankly. Yes.